Growing up in the arcades in the 80s and early 90s, I got quite accustomed to using a joystick to control my games. So when I found out that Hori was releasing the Fighting Stick Mini for the Nintendo Switch, I figured I'd best take a look. Join me today as we do an unboxing and a review of the Hori Fighting Stick Mini for Nintendo Switch. This is Half Circle Forward. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at the Hori Fighting Stick Mini. This is an arcade-style fighting stick for the Nintendo Switch. And this is currently available for about $49.99 wherever you usually buy your games at. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's take a look and see what's inside the box. Obviously here you can see the outside of the box. It's just a fairly standard Nintendo fare with a product shot there. And then on the back here it just has a brief overview of what the joystick is and what it does for you. And looking at the sides there's just a couple more product shots. So we'll open this up, we'll break the seal here on the top and see what's inside the box. So as a collector, I try and keep everything as nice as I can, and the way they've sealed this is kind of awkward. Either the box or the seal is going to get messed up, which kind of bothers me a little bit. So here we are, let's get inside the box and see what's in there. Okay, so it looks like the joystick's packaged quite nicely here. It's wrapped in a like styrofoam wrap. And you can see there on the top there's a cardboard protector to protect the joystick in transit, so that's quite nice. So we'll get rid of this packaging and pull off the styrofoam here and take a look at the joystick itself. I think we'll speed this up just a little bit as well because I was trying to take care not to destroy the wrap here as I was taking it off. And there's the joystick. I really like the small form factor of this. It's quite impressive. I think it's nice, definitely if you're going to be traveling with this. It's not too weighty, but it's got a little bit of weight to it. It does feel like the build quality is quite good. So let's take a closer look at the face buttons here. I really like the layout for this. They've done a 4-on-4 configuration, which would be perfect for any of your fighting games. And then up at the top, you've got your home, screen capture, plus, minus, and also a turbo button. So trying out these buttons, they do feel just a little bit mushy. I like the layout, but we'll see how they respond in just a couple of minutes. And the joystick here is micro switch based, so that should be good. Looking at the back, really quite nondescript, just a Hori sticker on there. And since this is a wired controller, obviously you've got a USB cable here. The cable comes in around about 10 foot and just has a standard USB plug on the end to plug into your Switch dock. So now we've taken a look at the joystick itself. I guess we need to test it out and see how it actually works. So I've picked a couple of games here. I spent 2 or 3 hours with this joystick on various different games. And hopefully we'll be able to get a good feeling of how the joystick controls. So we'll start off looking at one of my favorite games. This is the Namco Museum Arcade Pack, and specifically we'll be looking at Pac-Man. I really wanted to see how the joystick reacted for precision inputs, and I couldn't think of a better game than this to try it on, so let's take a look and see. Okay, so here we are in Pac-Man, and initially, first impression is pretty good. There does seem to be a little bit of play in the controller, which I wasn't really expecting from a micro switch-based joystick. You'll see if you watch the controls up in the top there's a couple of places where there seems to be just a little bit of input lag. I think just because of the give in the controller, which is not great, obviously, for a game like this where it's all precision. So that pretty much answers the question as to whether it can do precision inputs. Alright, so now we're going to go over to another one of my favourite collections here. This is the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection. And more specifically, we're going to be looking at Street Fighter Alpha. Now, any of the Street Fighter games, or fighting games in general, are really why this controller exists. So hopefully we'll see some better results with this than we did with Pac-Man. Okay, so here we are in Street Fighter Alpha, and this should be a really good test to see whether the joystick can do a complex series of inputs. And again, as I'm playing Street Fighter here, the joystick seems kind of mushy. The face buttons are really responsive. I was actually quite impressed with those. No issues there. But as I'm trying to pull off some special moves here, you'll see there's a couple of times that I do the inputs, but unfortunately it just doesn't respond. So again, the joystick just really let this down. And this wasn't the first game that I'd played using the joystick. I just wanted to use one small clip. But every game seemed to be very, very similar. Now this is a really good example. You can see here where I'm trying to pull off a couple of hurricane kicks and a fireball. I'm clearly putting the inputs in, but the game's just not recognizing it. It's incredibly frustrating. So after playing Street Fighter with its pretty high-paced button inputs, I decided to take a look at something a little bit slower. So next up, we're going to be taking a look at one of the import titles, and this is the Capcom Belt Action Collection. And more specifically, we're going to be taking a look at Final Fight. So here we are playing Final Fight, and I'm really hoping that the slower-paced action and lack of complex inputs is going to benefit the controller itself. So let's get moving and see how this works. So on the face of it, I'm really not experiencing as much input lag as I had before. I'm not sure whether that is due to the lack of complex inputs. Like I said, this isn't the first game I played through on Final Fight using the arcade stick. I wanted to give it a fair shake, but I honestly feel like I had a really good time with this. It felt more responsive than it did with Street Fighter or Pac-Man. And I honestly think that it is down to the slower paced gameplay and lack of complex moves. So for this type of game, the joystick really stood out. I think this would be great for any kind of side-scrolling beat-em-up. Maybe Streets of Rage on the Genesis collection, obviously Final Fight, or even maybe the newer ones like Rage Injustice. So for the final game, I wanted to change it up just a little bit and move away from the classic arcade games, and I wanted to see how well the joystick handled a shmup. So for that, I went back into my import collection and picked out Radirgy Swag, which just came out on the Japanese eShop. So here we are getting into Radirgy Swag. Now, this game is a fast-paced vertical shoot-'em-up, very similar to Chaos Field or Ikaruga, and I'll be really interested to see if we can notice any input lag like we did on Street Fighter or Pac-Man. Now, I spent a good 45 minutes playing the game through on the arcade stick, and in all honesty, it felt very similar to when I was playing Final Fight. While the game's super fast and does require pretty quick reflexes and inputs, I never really felt that the controller was letting me down, and I never really felt that there was any lag on the joystick inputs. Again, I think this might be because it doesn't require complex inputs like Street Fighter did, or precision inputs like Pac-Man did. And again, I had a really good time playing this game using this controller. So for shoot-'em-ups, I would probably recommend this controller as well. So after spending so much time playing through these games, I wanted to try and figure out exactly why the joystick was feeling so muddy. So here you'll see a quick close-up of the joystick, and I'm also going to try and give you a good idea of how the joystick sounds as well. If you've ever used a micro switch joystick, you'll have a good idea, but I wanted to let you hear that too. If you look as I'm moving the stick around here, you'll notice there's about a 2 to 3 millimeter gap between where the center of the stick is and where the micro switch activates. Now, I'm going to assume that that would be the reason that the stick feels a little bit muddy here and there and is slightly non-responsive from time to time. And in all honesty, that's really the only downside that I can see with this joystick. I really wanted to love the Hori Fighting Stick Mini. I like the layout and I love the small form factor, but the inaccuracy in control really put a damper on it for me. Can I recommend this as a day-to-day go-to controller for your Switch? Yes, but maybe for only certain types of games, as you saw in the video earlier. If you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Thanks for watching.